My name is Matthew Linetto, and this is my place in Canadian history. The story begins in Sapporo, Japan, in a little village named Hikone. My great-grandfather Yu Okuno and grandmother Shige Okuno were born in 1882 in Sapporo, Japan. Like most Japanese families at the time, it was an arranged marriage. In the early 1900s, they decided to travel to Western Canada. At that time, many young men like you traveled to Canada hearing about the job opportunities and educational opportunities as well. He wanted to build a life and start a family in Canada. While he was working overseas, he decided to become a Canadian citizen with Shige. In 1912, they both became official Canadian citizens. Yu was able to find a job at a local fishery in BC. In 1914, they had their first child, my great-uncle George. 4 years later, my grandfather Matthew, and eventually had 4 sons and 2 daughters. George, Matthew, Margaret, Billy, John, and Jane. Many Japanese families faced racism and hate crime. But after World War II started in 1939, people of Japanese descent faced even more racism and hate crime than ever before. Canadians protested against Japanese rights to live in Canada and made Japanese Canadians feel more than unwanted. Following the Pearl Harbor attack in 1941, Prime Minister William Lyon Mackenzie issued for Japanese to be interned. This was based on the suspicion of spies and an upbringing. Yu and Shige, along with their entire family, were sent to an internment camp in southern British Columbia known as Popov. Many Japanese Canadians were relocated to this isolated village. Although these camps were dirty, the living conditions were normal. The Canadian government sold their property and the majority of their belongings. With the defeat of Hitler and the Nazis, the World War ended in 1945. Japanese Canadians were released. Yu, Shige, and Margaret settled back into British Columbia. The 4 sons decided to move to Ontario where the discrimination was not as bad. My grandfather heard about the job opportunities in Toronto and decided to give it a shot. Unfortunately, due to new government restrictions, it was hard for him to move in Toronto, so he was forced to move into Thornhill, where now my family lives. He started his own company called All Metal, where they manufactured car brakes. After a few years, he met my grandma Polly at a local Buddhist church. They got married in 1951 and raised 2 daughters, Sharon and my mother Elaine Okuno. My mother went to Guelph University, where she later met my dad, Richard Linetto, who funnily also taught her in university. In September of 1988, the Prime Minister issued her address, which was an apology for what happened to Japanese Canadians during World War II. During this time, my parents got married and gave birth to 3 children. Me, the youngest of the bunch, my sister Emily Linetto, the second oldest, and my oldest sister, Caitlin Linetto. However, my oldest sister, Caitlin Linetto, was struck dead in 1955 by a taxicab, leaving just me and my sister. My great-grandfather Yu dreamed of being what our family is today, a free and proud Japanese-Canadian family. Because of him, my life is possible. I'm grateful for that. After learning about what he had to persevere through and the tough times he faced in order for my grandpa, my mother, and I to live freely in Canada, I have a newfound respect for my Japanese heritage. With that in mind, I look to the future so that what we went through in order to get my family into Canada does not go to waste.